What if I told you that the man whose voice has moved thousands to tears, whose ministry has touched generations, spends more time staring at spreadsheets than sheet music? That behind every powerful performance, there's a battle most fans never see. This is the untold story of Ernie Haase, and it's far more compelling than anything you've heard on stage. Because while you've been moved by the music, you've never witnessed the price tag attached to keeping that message alive. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you see gospel ministry forever. And by the end of this, you'll understand why some of the most faithful servants are fighting battles that would make most of us quit before we even started. Picture this. It's 3 in the morning on a tour bus, somewhere between Nashville and who knows where. While fans are home sleeping peacefully after an incredible concert, Ernie Haase is hunched over his laptop, not writing the next great hymn, but calculating whether the fuel costs for next month's tour will bankrupt his ministry. This is the reality nobody talks about. The glory, the music, the standing ovations, those are real. But they're only half the story. The other half involves decisions that would break most people, sacrifices that never make it to social media, and a level of dedication that goes far beyond what any job description could ever capture. And here's what makes this even more fascinating. Ernie chose this. He chose it knowing full well the cost, and he keeps choosing it every single day. Why? That's the question that haunts me, and it's the question we're going to answer together. Let's start with something most people don't realize. Gospel ministry in the 21st century isn't just about having a good voice and a heart for Jesus. It's about being a businessman, a psychologist, a marriage counselor, a spiritual leader, and a financial strategist all at once. The model that worked for legends like the Cathedrals or the Gaither vocal band, that's crumbling. The foundation is shifting under everyone's feet, and only the truly committed are figuring out how to stay standing. Ernie Haase and Signature Sound. They're not just staying standing, they're thriving. But the cost of that success is something most fans would never imagine, and it's something that reveals the true character of the man behind the microphone. Here's where it gets really interesting. The financial pressures alone would crush most ministries within a year. Think about this for a second. Every single concert you attend, every single song that moves your spirit, has a price tag attached that would shock you. We're not talking about pocket change. We're talking about bus fuel that costs thousands of dollars per week, hotel rooms for an entire crew, food expenses that pile up night after night, insurance policies that protect against the unthinkable, venue rentals that eat into profit margins before a single ticket is sold, sound technicians who are worth their weight in gold, merchandise that requires upfront investment with no guarantee of return, and payroll for team members who depend on this ministry to feed their families. Now multiply that by 52 weeks a year, subtract the reality that CD sales have plummeted in the digital age. Factor in that ticket prices can only go so high before you price out the very people you're trying to reach. And you begin to understand the tightrope Ernie walks every single day. But here's what most people miss, and this is crucial. Ernie isn't just managing a business. He's stewarding a calling. There's a massive difference. A businessman cuts costs to maximize profit. A steward of a calling makes sacrifices to maximize impact. And that difference shows up in every decision he makes. When secular artists hit financial struggles, they have major record labels and investors ready to bail them out. They have corporate sponsors lined up. They have backup plans and safety nets. Gospel artists like Ernie, they have faith, ingenuity, and a stubborn refusal to let money dictate whether the message gets shared. He's had to get creative in ways that would make MBA graduates nod in respect. Combining concert tickets with exclusive digital content, rearranging entire tour schedules to save on fuel costs without disappointing fans, cutting back on equipment that seemed essential until the budget demanded otherwise, creating merchandise strategies that turn every concert into multiple revenue streams. And here's the kicker. Every single dollar he makes gets poured right back into the mission. not into luxury buses or fancy hotels, not into building a personal empire, into reaching one more church, one more lost soul, one more community that needs to hear that there's hope beyond their circumstances. Now, let me tell you something that Ernie said that stopped me in my tracks. He said, and I quote, "People think it's all glory and music, but spreadsheets are more frequently on my desk than sheet music. Management is the foundation, but ministry is the goal." Let that sink in for a moment. The man whose voice you've heard leading worship, whose tenor has brought you to tears, spends more time managing finances than creating art. And yet, he doesn't complain. He doesn't resent it. He sees it as part of the calling. Because without the foundation of wise management, the ministry collapses. It's that simple. And here's what makes this even more powerful. In an age where churches are closing, where attendance is declining, where younger generations are walking away from traditional faith expressions, Ernie has figured out how to adapt without compromising. He's embraced streaming platforms when other artists were still clinging to physical CDs. He's launched virtual concerts when the pandemic shut down live events. He's created subscription models and behind-the-scenes content that keeps fans engaged between tours. But, and this is important, he's done all of this while keeping the message pure. He hasn't diluted the gospel to make it more marketable. He hasn't softened the truth to appeal to broader audiences. He's found a way to use modern tools to spread an ancient message, and that's a skill very few people possess. But the financial stress is only one layer of this story, and honestly, it might be the easiest layer to understand. Because money problems can be solved with creativity and hard work. The spiritual challenges Ernie faces, those cut much deeper, and they reveal something profound about what it really means to serve in ministry long-term. Here's the trap that most gospel singers fall into, and it's a trap so subtle that you don't even realize you're in it until it's too late. When your job is to sing about Jesus, when your profession requires you to be spiritually uplifting night after night, it becomes incredibly easy to confuse professional performance with personal devotion. You can sing all the right words, hit all the right notes, move audiences to tears, and still be spiritually dry inside. It's like a doctor who's so busy treating patients that he ignores his own failing health. Ernie understands this danger better than most, and he's been brutally honest about his own struggles with it. He's admitted publicly that there have been seasons where he was singing about Jesus on stage while gradually drifting away from him personally. That kind of honesty is rare, and it's exactly what makes his ministry authentic. Think about what he said at a gospel leadership forum, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the essence was this: it is possible to be singing about Jesus in ministry while slowly drifting away from him. I've had to ensure that my personal relationship with the Lord is more profound than what's displayed on stage. That statement should shake every person who's ever been in ministry, because it's the truth nobody wants to admit. You can serve God professionally while neglecting Him personally. You can preach the gospel while losing the gospel in your own heart. And Ernie has fought against that temptation for decades. He's fought it in hotel rooms at 2 a.m. when he's exhausted and lonely. He's fought it on long bus rides when the silence becomes deafening. He's fought it during dry spiritual seasons when the prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. And he's fought it by maintaining spiritual disciplines that most people abandon when life gets hard. Prayer when it feels pointless. Scripture reading when the words seem flat. Seeking counsel when pride says he should have all the answers. Leaning on his wife Lisa when the weight becomes too much to bear alone. And speaking of Lisa, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in ministry stories: the cost on relationships. Because here's the truth. You can have all the talent in the world, you can have the financial backing and the spiritual depth, but if your relationships fall apart, your ministry becomes a hollow shell. And maintaining healthy relationships in the pressure cooker of touring ministry is one of the hardest things anyone can do. Ernie isn't just managing a gospel group. He's leading a family of individuals with different personalities, different struggles, different seasons of life. He's the leader, yes, but he's also the coach, the counselor, the mediator, and sometimes the spiritual father figure. When tensions rise backstage, and they always do, he's the one who has to navigate personality conflicts with grace. When someone on the team is going through a personal crisis, he's the one who has to be present while still keeping the show running. When creative differences threaten to split the group, he's the one who has to find common ground without compromising the vision. This is exhausting work. The kind of work that never makes it to concert footage, but determines whether a ministry survives or collapses. Gospel groups have high turnover rates, and there's a reason for that. The road is brutal. The pay often isn't great. The sacrifices required are enormous. Family time becomes a luxury. Normal life becomes a memory. And burnout is always lurking around the corner. But Ernie has worked tirelessly to create something different within Signature Sound. He's built a culture where people aren't just employees, they're family, where the mission is bigger than any individual, where there's room for honest conversation and genuine care. He once said something that captures this beautifully. When someone joins Signature Sound, they're joining a family, not just a quartet, and family takes work. That statement right there reveals everything about his leadership philosophy. He doesn't see his team members as replaceable parts in a machine. He sees them as individuals with intrinsic worth, with struggles and dreams and families of their own. And that kind of leadership is increasingly rare in any industry, let alone in the high-pressure world of touring ministry. But here's where the relational challenges get even more complex, and this is something Ernie has had to navigate with incredible wisdom. The fans. Gospel music fans aren't just casual listeners. They're a community with deep emotional bonds to the artists. They view these singers as spiritual leaders, as examples to follow, as representatives of the faith they hold dear. And that means every word spoken on stage, every social media post, every interview, every public appearance is scrutinized through a spiritual lens. Fans hold gospel artists to standards that would break most people. They expect perfection in behavior, consistency in message, alignment with their values on every issue. And when an artist makes a decision they disagree with, whether it's a change in musical style or a statement on a social issue, or even something as simple as a new band member, the backlash can be intense. Ernie has had to learn how to honor the values and expectations of his audience while also staying true to his own convictions and artistic vision. It's a delicate dance, one that requires discernment, humility, and a thick skin. He can't please everyone, but he also can't afford to alienate the very people who support his ministry. So he leads with integrity, makes decisions based on prayer and wisdom rather than popularity, and accepts that criticism comes with the territory. Now, let me share something that I think is at the heart of why Ernie has survived and thrived when so many others have fallen away. It's not just his talent, though he has that in abundance. It's not just his work ethic, though he works harder than most people would believe. It's his marriage to Lisa. I cannot overstate how crucial this relationship has been to his ministry. In a world where ministry marriages crumble under the pressure of travel and public scrutiny, where pastors and gospel singers end up divorced because they sacrificed their marriages on the altar of their calling, Ernie and Lisa have built something that endures, and they've done it intentionally. They've prioritized communication even when it's hard. They've made time for each other even when the schedule is insane. They've maintained a shared spiritual life that goes deeper than just praying before concerts. Lisa isn't just Ernie's wife. She's his prayer partner, his counselor, his anchor when the storms hit. He's said publicly that she's the one who prays for him through every challenge, who believes in him when he doubts himself, who reminds him of his calling when the road gets dark. That kind of partnership is priceless, and it's something that can't be faked or manufactured. It's built over years of choosing each other, even when ministry demands threaten to pull them apart. And here's what I find absolutely fascinating about all of this. With all these pressures, with all these challenges, With all the reasons to quit or compromise or take the easy path, Ernie hasn't done any of that. He's still standing. He's still singing. He's still leading. He's still believing that gospel music has the power to change lives. And not because he's superhuman or because he's immune to discouragement. He's faced deeply discouraging times. Times when ticket sales dropped and made him wonder if people still cared. Times when spiritual fervor dried up and left him questioning his own faith. Times when relationships fractured and made him doubt his leadership. But in every one of those moments, he's come back to the calling that first ignited in him as a young man. Back when he was watching legends like Glenn Payne and George Young's, back when he felt that unmistakable tug toward gospel music. Back when he knew beyond any doubt that this was what he was meant to do with his life. He said it clearly, the world is changing, but the gospel remains constant, and I will sing it as long as God allows me to breathe. That's not just a nice sentiment. That's a declaration of purpose that transcends circumstances. Let me tell you why this matters so much, not just for Ernie's story, but for anyone watching this who's ever tried to pursue something meaningful against overwhelming odds. Because here's the truth that most people don't want to hear. Anything worth doing will cost you more than you expect. It will demand more time, more energy, more sacrifice than you imagined when you started. It will test your faith, strain your relationships, and push you to the edge of your capacity. And you'll have moments where you wonder if it's worth it. Where you look at the cost and question whether you should keep going. But here's what Ernie's story teaches us. The cost is worth it when the cause is bigger than yourself. When you're not just building a career, but stewarding a calling. When you're not just entertaining people, but pointing them toward hope. When you're not just surviving but serving something eternal. That perspective changes everything. It transforms financial stress from a burden into a challenge to be creative. It transforms spiritual dryness from a crisis into an opportunity for deeper growth. It transforms relational conflict from a reason to quit into a chance to love better. This is what Ernie has understood that many others miss. Ministry isn't about comfort or glamour or fame. It's about obedience to a divine call even when circumstances are unclear and outcomes are uncertain. And here's what makes his story even more powerful as we come toward the end of this journey together. Ernie hasn't just survived. He's thrived in ways that defy logic. He's innovated when others clung to old models. He's adapted when others resisted change. He's remained relevant across multiple decades when most artists fade after one generation. He's maintained spiritual integrity when compromise would have been easier. He's kept his marriage strong when ministry could have destroyed it. He's built a team culture that attracts and retains talented people when turnover is the norm. And he's done all of this while staying true to the core message that Jesus saves, that the gospel transforms lives, that there's hope for the hopeless and healing for the broken. That message hasn't changed, but his methods have evolved brilliantly. He's used streaming when CDs became obsolete. He's created virtual concerts when live events shut down. He's built digital communities when physical gatherings became limited. He's turned social media into a tool for ministry instead of just marketing. And through all of it, his performances still carry the same passion they did decades ago. The message remains consistent. His leadership still operates on grace rather than control. And perhaps most encouraging of all, his joy is undiminished. Think about that for a moment. After decades of pressure, after countless battles with finances and relationships and spiritual warfare, after every reason to become cynical or bitter or exhausted, Ernie still has joy, not fake joy, not performance joy, real, authentic joy that comes from knowing he's exactly where he's supposed to be, doing exactly what he's called to do. That's the mark of someone who's walking in their purpose. And that's the legacy he's building, not just as a singer, but as a mentor to the next generation, as a model of what gospel ministry can be in uncertain times. Faithful when trends change, authentic when pressure mounts, hopeful when others despair, obedient when the path isn't clear. This is what makes Ernie Haase more than just a talented tenor. This is what makes him a steward of something sacred, a keeper of a message that transcends generations, a leader who's willing to bear the cost, because he believes the reward isn't found in this life, but in the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So as we close this out, let me bring this full circle to where we started. That image of Ernie at 3 in the morning on a tour bus, staring at spreadsheets instead of sheet music. Now you understand what that image really means. It means he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep the message alive. It means he values stewardship as much as he values singing. It means he's not just an artist, he's a servant. And his story gives us a blueprint for what faithful service looks like when the world is changing faster than we can keep up. It looks like innovation without compromise. It looks like adaptation without dilution. It looks like perseverance when quitting would be understandable. It looks like choosing purpose over profit, calling over comfort, eternal impact over temporary applause. This is the untold story of Ernie Haase, the battle you never see behind the music you love. And it matters because it reminds us that the people we admire, the leaders we follow, the voices that move us, they're paying prices we never consider. They're fighting battles we never witness. They're making sacrifices we never acknowledge. And maybe, just maybe, understanding their struggle will inspire us to be more faithful in our own callings, whatever they might be. Because at the end of the day, it's not about surviving the stress. It's about transforming that stress into testimony. It's about letting the pressure produce character, instead of allowing it to produce bitterness.